to malign India. Is the West an ally only in name? Ladies and gentlemen, it is said words are free, but it's how you use them that may cost you. And when it comes to India and Canada, a seemingly construed narrative is being pushed by certain sections of the Western media. While Prime Minister Justin Trudeau blamed Indian media for attacking Canada, Canadians, and the integrity of Canadian democracy, his country's own media isn't publishing facts.
Having done all that, we returned to Canada, and it was obvious that the Indian government response, particularly through the media, was to instead attack Canada, to attack Canadians, to criticize us, to undermine our government and our governance, and quite frankly, the integrity of our democracy.
Now, as soon as this entire standoff erupted, multiple news agencies gave out Canada's version of the developments instead of a neutral coverage. Global News of Canada called Khalistani terrorists as Modi's opponents. Washington Post combined Khalistanis with the entire Sikh community and stated that Canada has alleged a much wider campaign by Modi government against Sikhs. New York Times, Associated Press and Reuters posted Canada expels Indian diplomats when in fact, hours before the Trudeau government supposedly expelled Indian diplomats, the Modi government had already stated that they have withdrawn the officials.
You would have seen we had summoned the Acting High Commissioner of Canada, and thereafter conveyed that we had no faith that the Canadian government will look after the safety of our diplomats, and therefore we had taken a decision to withdraw our High Commissioner and along with him 5 other diplomats. Subsequent to that, we saw that there was a communication from the Canadian side asking them to leave, but we had withdrawn our diplomats before their decision.
Now, clearly, the foreign media's coverage of this entire face-off is replete with inconsistencies and convenient omissions. To talk more about this, I'm joined by Mr. Prabhu Dayal, former ambassador. I'm also joined by Mr. Alok Bansal, Director, India Foundation. Good evening. Namaskar to both of you. Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, let me begin with you. What do you make of the kind of coverage that the foreign media has given to the India-Canada face-off? Clearly, it is very conveniently putting out facts. It is very conveniently generalizing the Sikh community with the rest of the Khalistani elements.
Well, Shreya, first of all, thanks for having me on your show. And this topic which you have chosen is extremely important, and unfortunately, not much attention is being given to it. That is to say, the bias in the Western media's coverage of this dispute which has unfortunately arisen between India and Canada. The Western media, by and large, has parroted Trudeau's narrative. All the lies that he was putting out, the Western media has gullibly swallowed and has churned them out as if these are reliable. And you know, the entire coverage smacks of a bias. I have served in the West, and I know that there is a bias which these so-called white countries have against their former colonies or countries which are in inverted colored. And the Western media has shown this bias pouring out of them because their coverage has been totally biased and unfair. Now, for instance, in the coverage relating to the Sikhs in Canada, the Western media totally forgets that there is this separatist Khalistani movement which wants to break up India.
Yes.
And in fact, it is the Khalistanis who were behind the biggest act of terrorism that took place, that is the 1985 Air India Kanishka bombing, in which 329 people were killed, including 268 Canadians. So it conveniently forgets
Yeah.
where the wrongs are being done and tries to put the finger of accusation against India. In this entire episode relating to India-Canada, that's what happened. And Shreya, let me mention, now Justin Trudeau has proved to be a liar because he has said that he never gave proof to India, whereas all along he was claiming that proof had been given to India. Now he said he had shared with India intel information, intelligence information. But will the Western media point fingers at him and say he had behaved so irresponsibly? No, they will continue to parrot the Canadian line,
Which is what my next
unfortunate
question was, Ambassador Prabhu Dayal. Let me get in Alok Bansal into this conversation. Alok Bansal, we are seeing a clear bias from certain sections of the Western media, and it's not the first time that they're doing it. This has been happening since the past few years. But do you also think that it has something to do with the fact that, the US, UK media houses are involved and they are also part of the Five Eyes Alliance, something that Justin Trudeau referred to as well when he said that possibly we've got evidence from one of the Five Eyes partners as well?
See, firstly, we need to understand that the Western media, firstly, doesn't understand India or Indian conditions. So firstly, there is ignorance. Then there is bias because they still feel that they are the colonial masters ruling over the world, which is not the case. And thirdly, in this particular case, they have a vested agenda because some of their countries are involved. Some of the white superpowers, the so-called Anglo-Saxon alliance, is involved. But the fact of the matter is they don't know that only a very minuscule percentage of the Sikh diaspora is Khalistani terrorists or aligned with Khalistani viewpoint. But they are calling this as a pogrom against Sikhs or Modi government targeting Sikhs. That's what they are trying to show and indicate. They have at no stage pointed out that the Canadian government has hopelessly failed in its mission to control the Khalistani terrorists. In fact, one of their own MPs of the Liberal Party had earlier made a very clear allegation that Liberal Party policymakers are linked with Khalistani terrorist organizations. But rather than acting on his input, he was himself suspended from the party. So that has been the case. The Western media has failed to indicate that Emperor Kanishka's bombing, the Air India planes bombing over Atlantic, which killed more than 100 Canadian citizens, the perpetrators are still roaming free within Canada, and Canadian government has done nothing. So all these failures of Canada have not been pointed, but they have gone by a narrative which they have churned out to implicate India. At the same time, Mr. Trudeau and his diplomats have been telling lies in the face of public. You saw the day that Charge d'Affaires of the Canadian High Commission was summoned in MEA. He came out and said, we have given them incontrovertible proof. Now, this incontrovertible proof today has become that we have no proof and we have only given the intel. So, is somebody's intelligence without any authenticity a proof? Nowhere in the world. Tomorrow we give them an intel that Trudeau is involved with Khalistani terrorism. Will they accept it? I don't think so. So I think this bias of the Western media, where they still think that they are ruling the world, needs to be curtailed. They must be told that, sorry, this is not the case. What the truth is, they must be made aware.
Alok Bansal, I'll come to how India can counter this and whether India is able to counter this entire narrative that has been set by Western media. But before that, let me ask Ambassador Prabhu Dayal. Ambassador Dayal, talking about the Five Eyes Alliance, the US has spoken on it, the UK has spoken on it, New Zealand has spoken on it as well. Do you see that, of course, it's evident that there is a clear rising pressure that is being put on India. Do you see this sort of impacting the India relationship with these particular countries, or India succumbing to the kind of pressure that is being put on it without, by the way, Canada giving us any credible evidence?
As far as the pressure from all these countries is concerned, I'm sure India can take it. Frankly speaking, they need India as much as we need them, perhaps more. For instance, our biggest partner in the Western world is now the United States. And the US, frankly speaking, covets the huge Indian defense market. India is the world's largest importer of defense equipment, and the United States wants to capture as big a share in our defense market as possible. And frankly speaking, they know that we can turn to other sources if they act difficult with us or if they do things or say things which are not liked by us. So, Frank, in this entire controversy, while they have gone along with Canada on account of the Five Eyes and all that, but they have not been so vituperative or so strong, so anti-India, as for instance, Canada itself has been. So they have supported Canada, but the US knows that it cannot afford to annoy India beyond a point. Similarly, countries like Australia, New Zealand, and the UK, they have a lot of stake in a good relationship with India. The Australian Prime Minister has been pretty muted in his remarks. So this clearly shows that while Canada has egged them on to support it, they know to what extent they should go. And I don't think they have been so outspoken in this matter as Canada would have liked them to be.
And you know what's interesting, Ambassador Prabhu Dayal and Alok Bansal, is the fact that when Justin Trudeau was asked about the Chinese interference in Canadian elections, which was concluded by Canadian spies themselves for the 2019 and 2021 Canadian elections, both of which were won by Justin Trudeau, the answer he had was, that's what diplomats do. That's the kind of justification you get from Justin Trudeau when it comes to China. But Alok Bansal, when we know that there is all this bias, there is narrative being manipulated, construed to suit certain vested interests, what are we doing about it? Why is it that global media houses and global media agencies are still going ahead and publishing whatever they want and spreading disinformation and not presenting facts as is from both sides? We're not saying, you go ahead only with the India version, but you present a neutral side at least.
Firstly, I think Indian media has to do the bidding. They have to present our side. We need to run stories on what happened to Emperor Kanishka. So many decades have passed. What happened to the victims? What justice has been delivered? Let's bring it out. Let's publish it in Indian international media as well. Many of our columnists can publish it in international media. We can continue to do that. The government also needs to put across its point of view, send it to various media channels. I'm sure there are some media houses even in the West which are willing to take your point. So I think these points must be put. These needs to be put coherently and cogently as to what all has happened and what are the errors in Western narrative. I think Western audience needs to be educated as to who is a Khalistani terrorist and who is a Sikh Indian and who is an Indian national and who are opponents of Modi and who are terrorists. And what has Canada done with these terrorists? How these terrorists have been supported by the Canadian government and how people within Canada have been pointing out about Canada's mistakes. There was a Baloch nationalist, Karima Baloch, who was found dead in suspicious circumstances in Canada. Her family members keep claiming that she has been murdered, but Canada has closed the case saying that it's a suicide. Well, there was no reason for that lady to commit suicide, but they have said it's a suicide. Her husband doesn't agree, her family doesn't agree, but it's a suicide. So that sort of a dichotomy within Canada needs to be highlighted. It should be highlighted as to how Liberal Party is dependent on support from Khalistani sympathizers, which is actually twisting or shifting Trudeau's stance or manipulating his ideas about this particular case.
Ambassador Dayal, when Justin Trudeau was speaking yesterday at that hearing, he said particularly that we might have had evidence from one of the Five Eyes partners as well. So far, we've only been talking about how, there must be a Chinese hand behind all of this. But do we also look at the fact that probably one of the Five Eye partners is also helping or pushing Justin Trudeau in doing what he's doing?
Justin Trudeau had said that he had received intelligence inputs from the Five Eyes. Now, intelligence inputs are often based on hearsay. This is what we have learned. You prepare a little paper and send it across. Frankly speaking, it is not reliable. It is not credible. It doesn't count as evidence. Now, at the federal inquiry, the inquiry that was being held yesterday in Canada, why was Justin Trudeau not able to say what he had been telling us, that he has given credible evidence? Because it's an inquiry, he's on oath. If he lies there and he's caught, he'll be inside prison. So he had to say what was true, and that is that he had not given India proof, but he had given some intelligence inputs. He had shared intelligence. That is not the same thing as proof. Now, once this matter is out in the public domain, I think that sections of the Canadian press will definitely write on how Justin Trudeau had been misleading everybody. Believe me, what impression I get after reading the Canadian media is that he is not popular with all sections. There are many sections of the media who distrust him, who want him out, and who feel that he's been very bad for Canada in the sense that he has not done much for the economy. The cost of living has gone up, inflation is high, there is a housing crisis, and there are various other ways in which Canadians are feeling the pinch. So not all sections of the Canadian media are in favor. And in fact, the bulk of the media now feels that it is time for a change and that the Conservatives should be able to form a government, even if it's a coalition government. So let us see how the Canadian media now reacts.
Okay.
Now, talking about the China factor, he devoted all his attention and he did all the finger pointing at India because he was trying to prove a point why he had leveled these accusations. If he had said that there was a greater danger from China, then his case would have been diluted. So he continued on his path of lying, even though since he was under oath, he could not tell the lie that he would have dearly loved to, and that is that he had given proof to India, which he never had.
Yeah. All right, we'll leave it there. Let's wait and watch how this entire diplomatic face-off continues in the near future. Thank you very much, Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, for joining us at the moment. Alok Bansal, of course, you continue with us on the Israel-Hamas war. But right now, Ambassador Dayal, thank you very much. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we shift our focus to that big development that has come in from West Asia. In a significant escalation in the West Asia conflict, Israeli Defense Forces have hinted that Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas and the mastermind behind the October 7th attacks, may have been killed in a recent airstrike in Gaza. Now, the IDF has not confirmed his death yet, but it has indicated that intelligence points to a high-level target being struck. Sinwar has been a pivotal figure, remember, in Hamas, and his potential elimination could alter the dynamics of this entire conflict. As the situation continues to unfold, this development could have far-reaching implications for both the region and the ongoing military operations. All right, joining me on the broadcast is Adam Scott Bellow, CEO, Israel Innovation Fund, and of course, Alok Bansal, Director, India Foundation. Adam, good evening. Namaskar. Thank you very much for joining us. This is massive news that is coming in from Israel, Adam, and if it is confirmed by the IDF and the Prime Minister's office, it clearly changes the entire course of the war between Israel and Hamas. We are still awaiting that official confirmation, but what are you hearing? At your end, is there any sort of confirmation? There were certain tests being done to confirm the identity of the 3 Hamas members who've been killed.
Uh, from our end, everything has been confirmed. They are waiting for the DNA results to be expedited and confirmed. But other than that, the Israeli position is that Yahya Sinwar has been eliminated from the chessboard, so to speak. In addition to that, a number of photos have been found all over social media, pretty much confirming what we all believe to be true, that Sinwar has been eliminated as a target and is no longer a threat to the Jewish people in the state of Israel.
Now we just have to wait for the official announcement, Adam. But clearly, this is going to be a huge, huge win for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, considering the fact that Yahya Sinwar is widely believed to be the mastermind behind the October 7th attack by Hamas. And he has been operating clandestinely. It was tough for intelligence services and the forces to find him, to search for him. And now his killing, whenever it's confirmed, will be a big, big setback for Hamas.
This will definitely be considered a huge win for the Prime Minister, for Prime Minister Netanyahu. We're about to approach the 1-year anniversary of the October 7th massacre on the Jewish calendar, which took place on Simchat Torah, Shmini Atzeret, which is going to be coming up in the next 5-6 days. So while we've passed the October 7th Gregorian calendar anniversary, from the Jewish perspective, it's quite impactful and empowering to know that within less than 1 year on the Jewish calendar, we were able to eliminate Sinwar, given also the additional advances that we've now made in the north. And in addition to that, the success of our defensive military strategy when it has come to Iran over the last year and their direct attacks. I do think the elimination of Sinwar is going to create some type of response, whether it's from the Houthis, whether it's from Hezbollah, whether it's from Hamas, or whether it's from Iran themselves. As we've seen, every time we've eliminated a high target from the board, that is what has always occurred afterwards. Now, I do think, though, given how hard it was to eliminate Sinwar, and given how easy it has been to eliminate those outside of Gaza, I would say that, the Islamic Republic's leadership, their main goal is self-preservation. And I think the message that has now been sent to all of Israel's enemies is that self-preservation might not be a realistic goal for you now, which is, to respond to what you were saying earlier in the broadcast, this could mean for major changes with this conflict, and it could start to push certain actors to make irrational decisions in order to try to preserve themselves and their leadership, and most likely put their civilians in danger. And I think that's what will worry the Israeli people most. As you've seen, there have been many messages to both the Lebanese and the Iranians that our war is not with them, it's with Hezbollah or the Islamic Republic. Most people in Israel feel that the Islamic Republic is an occupying force of the Persian people. So I do worry what type of escalation will come from this elimination.
Let me take this across to Alok Bansal, Adam, who continues to be with us. Alok Bansal, this is something that erupts out of this emerging situation right now, this unfolding situation. The fact that now that Yahya Sinwar's death has to be confirmed, of course, but if he's killed, whether this will demotivate the Hamas members, because the entire top leadership has been killed. Hezbollah, we know, the top leadership as well as their replacements have been killed by Israeli forces. Will that demotivate them in this war, or will this escalate the war further in West Asia?
See, to my mind, Hamas is not likely to be demotivated. It is a big setback for them, undoubtedly. But I think considering the condition, the Hamas's resistance would continue. Israel has actually not been able to crush Hamas completely despite 1 year. On the other hand, Hezbollah has suffered a severe setback, and there has been a severe degradation of their ability to wage war. Unlike Hamas, Hezbollah was far more dependent on its leader and top echelon of leadership. Hamas, to my mind, appears more of an ideology which will be difficult to eradicate by purely bombs and bullets. So that is my viewpoint. If this is Yahya, because Israel is testing the DNA, which should confirm it that it is him, I think this could possibly be an act which could enable Israel to stop the offensive for a short while. That could be one of the things, because Israel could claim that the attackers have been eliminated and then probably negotiate for the release of the hostages. That could also be possible at this stage once Yahya has been killed, because almost the entire top leadership of Hamas, people who could be directly accused or blamed for the attack of 7th October, have probably been eliminated. And with this, if Israel or the Prime Minister Netanyahu wants, he could probably stop the offensive for a short while and negotiate hostages. That will be far more important at this juncture, because Prime Minister Netanyahu's approval ratings have suddenly shot up after successful attacks against Hezbollah.
Yeah. Adam, Alok Bansal mentioned the release of hostages and the negotiations around it. But do you not think that once this is confirmed and the official announcement is made that Yahya Sinwar has indeed been killed, there will also be a fear that the hostages that remain with Hamas might be in danger? Their lives will be in danger now.
I think the hostages' lives have been in danger since the moment they were taken on October 7th. And it was also reported that Sinwar was actually hiding with the 6 hostages that were most recently executed. So I don't believe that the hostages will be any more, I don't think they're going to be in any more of a dangerous situation that they've already been in. If they've been held captive, they've been held captive and kept alive in order to be bargaining chips at the right point in time. You may be right that this might mean that there may be no bargain to be had. At the same time, if they're unable to replace Sinwar's position, possibly the new leadership of Hamas might want to make some type of a deal. But as I said before, I do think that this assassination, this wiping of Sinwar off the board, so to speak, will lead to more irrational behavior by those who are at war with Israel. So I don't think it's far off to say that many more terrible things could be coming because of this, to be completely honest. We've been chopping off, the heads of the snake, and they've continued to regrow. So, to try to predict at this point what this could mean, I feel like there are so many different ways that we could go. The one thing that I can say for certain is that I definitely predict more irrational behavior by those leaders who are at war with Israel. And you may be right. The remaining hostages may be in even more danger than they already were.
Okay, so we'll have to wait and watch. And what we're getting to know right now, gentlemen, is the fact that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is expected to address and make a public statement in the next hour. So hopefully that confirmation will come in. But we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Adam Scott Bellows and Alok Bansal, for joining us on Global Mirror and sharing your perspective. Thank you very much. With that, viewers, it's a wrap on this broadcast. News and updates continue on Mirror Now. We will keep getting you the latest as far as the Yahya Sinwar death is concerned. But for now, it's a wrap. Up next is my colleague Sneha Koshi with Beyond the Headline.